Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 11th, 2026 Urban Renewal Agency meeting and Eugene City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment, and those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meetings materials page of the City of Eugene website. Thank you again for joining us today. I now call the February 11th, 2026 Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order, and I will turn to the agency director to introduce our first topic, which is a work session on Riverfront Urban Renewal District update.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you said, we're going to be talking about the riverfront and specifically about a proposal for 2 parcels that we've been looking to develop and working with the developer to move forward. I'm going to throw it to Will Dowdy, who will lead you through the presentation.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Or sorry, Mayor and Agency Board. Share my screen and get started. My name is Will Dowdy. I am the Community Development Director for the city. And it's been about a year since the last time we were here talking about this, and it is always a pleasure to be talking with you about the Riverfront Urban Renewal Agency District. Today, I'll be sharing information about future projects that will be on your agenda later this spring, as well as a land transaction for you as both board and council to consider today. But before looking forward, I'll start with a quick update on what's been happening in the district. Over the last year, the downtown Riverfront neighborhood has continued its substantial transformation. This is years of hard work and planning coming to fruition. The second residential building, Portal, opened last year with 130 units, which means we now have a total of 225 homes in the neighborhood. For decades, the vision has been to turn this former utility yard into a place for people to live, and with 2 buildings complete, there's a lot to celebrate. Speaking of celebrating, the plaza at the downtown Riverfront Park opened last summer, a 1-acre addition to the beautiful park that's already an important part of our river path system. The hardscape gathering area allows larger events and celebrations to take advantage of this unique location, and you can see families enjoying the play features in all sorts of weather. After working through the underlying legal mechanics, the agency and Dream Plant, that's the steam plant developer, have signed a development agreement consistent with the deal points approved by the agency board in 2024. The Dream Plant team is beginning artifact preservation, structural testing, and building documentation, working towards a construction start date of late 27 or early 28. Last year, you approved the use of urban renewal funds for a 75-unit affordable housing project on Parcel 2 at the corner of 4th and Mill. Because of that local commitment of funds, the project has been able to move forward in a process with the state. The team has been successful in an application for state funds and is currently in the queue with Oregon Housing and Community Services, moving forward as soon as its number gets called. And as you well know, but for the benefit of anyone watching, City Hall has been an important anchor in the neighborhood, with city workers and community members going in and out, and a full schedule of council meetings and other community events. It's a lot of success, but there's still more work to be done. I'd like to give you a preview of some projects that we will be bringing back to you later this spring for decisions. The first phase of Riverfront projects focused on some major components: the first housing at Heartwood and Portal, the community open space, the park and plaza, and the civic office at City Hall. There's now a second phase of projects that can bring together these bigger components, stitching the space between them and creating a unity and legibility for the Riverfront neighborhood. Everything I'll be talking to you about today will focus on this area right here at the central convergence of the neighborhood. And it starts with connection. And in this case, the physical connection between City Hall and the rest of the neighborhood, which is currently obstructed by the building's backup generator and a tall concrete wall. While there is a gravel pathway that goes around it, it's indirect and unfinished. Staff is working with a consultant on a proposal to relocate the generator and open up a better visual and physical connection through this area and integrating City Hall into the life of the neighborhood. We plan to bring you more information and an option to use urban renewal funds for this project at your work session later this spring. Next, let's talk about food. If you've ever been involved with this project, you have also heard someone in the community express their desire for a place to eat food and have drinks while looking out at the river. And if you were to walk out the front door of City Hall, turn left, use X-ray vision to look through that generator and its wall, you would see Parcel 8, the property identified for the food and drinks. We are excited to report that Atkins Dame is working with local restaurateur Colby Phillips to bring this vision to reality. If you don't know Mr. Phillips, you may be familiar with some of his work. He's best known for Eugene's Beer Garden and Springfield's Public House. We're actively working towards an agreement for a food hall concept for this site, something that would combine a variety of vendors and foods in a single gathering place. and we plan to bring you more information about this and an option to use urban renewal funds for this project later this spring. Connected to these two projects is a bigger look at the integration of City Hall into the neighborhood. Working with Walker Macy, the team that designed the Riverfront Park, we're looking at the feasibility of restructuring the connection between our preeminent civic building and the city it serves. What is the visitor experience like, whether walking or driving or arriving by bike or transit? When you walk out of the building, how do you find the park or destinations like food or stores? How can art and landscaping be used to create an appropriate edge between the park and the south side of City Hall? How can the parking lot be optimized to serve more community uses for more hours of the day? We plan to bring you more information and an option to use urban renewal funds for this project when we return later this spring. And with Parcel 2's affordable housing in line for state funding, Atkins Dame and Homes for Good have begun talking with staff about a second opportunity to bring more affordable housing into the neighborhood. The developers are exploring a smaller 24 to 28 unit project that could fit on Parcel 4, similarly serving households at or below 60% of area median income. As with the proposal for Parcel 2 last spring, staff is putting together an option for providing a local subsidy with urban renewal funds so that the project does not need to compete with any of our other locally competitive funds, such as federal home funds, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, or SDC exemptions. Atkins Dame is refining their proposal now, and we plan to bring you more information about this and an option to use urban renewal funds later this spring. With these 4 projects on the horizon, I'll now turn to one last item, a proposal for Parcels 4 and 5 for your deliberations and possible action today. Atkins Dame has proposed to the city that the city sells them a slice of the City Hall parking lot, while the agency in turn repurchases a small parcel from them. I have diagrams to show this in detail, but before going further, a little explanation may help anyone viewing who is not familiar with the history of the site. When the Urban Renewal Agency first purchased the riverfront site from eWeb, the sale did not include eWeb's headquarters building, which is what is now City Hall, and the property around it. This map from 10 years ago shows the property that the agency purchased from eWeb at the time, and you can also see where the headquarters building is and the parking lot in the upper right. That's the notch that's carved out there with the diagonal line that slopes down towards the river. When Atkins Dame created the final parcel map shown on the right, they put a lot of emphasis on extending the downtown grid and creating a strong connection point on Fifth Avenue. But you can see where it created parcels 4 and 5. These are the 2 awkward shapes shown in brown. The awkward shapes of those parcels, so it's, and I'm pointing that out because it's not the gray box, it's just the brown box in that area. As configured, the 2 parcels are hard to develop because of those awkward shapes. And so what the development team did is they ghosted in the gray areas to suggest how the fragments could be changed at a later time. Since eWeb was uninterested in selling off little pieces of their larger property, Atkins Dame was content to purchase 4 and 5 as odd shapes and wait for a new property owner to negotiate some sort of transaction. And diagrams like this one shown on the right from 2018 have been in many of our past council presentations. When the city purchased our new City Hall building, staff working on the riverfront and the City Hall renovation worked together to identify the area necessary for secure parking and determined that most of the area south of City Hall was important to retain for building operations. Seeking a viable path forward, Atkins Dame pivoted and have now proposed that they square off Parcel 4 and the agency repurchase Parcel 5. So you can see that here. You can see how Parcel 5, if it were to be squared off, would impact that south side of City Hall and the operations that are in that area. The extra land in Parcel 4 could make that site developable for a multifamily project, and that's where they're considering the affordable housing project that I just described. At the same time, the agency would propose to use Parcel 5 as a more flexible space to create a strong transition between the riverfront park and the City Hall property. Following build out of Parcel 5, the agency could transfer ownership of that parcel to the city for management of the site. The 2 properties are similarly sized. Each is no larger than a 1/12 of an acre, although Parcel 4A has not yet been surveyed, so the square footage shown here is only approximate. Staff recommends that the agency repurchase parcel 5 for $31 a square foot, the same per square foot price that it was sold to Atkins Dame. And at the same time, the city could sell the land we're showing as parcel 4A to Atkins Dame, also for the same price per square foot. For clarity, I should note that we rounded this number in your materials. The actual number was $31.09 per square foot, which means that I have a math error on my slide. The purchase price for parcel 5 should be about $300 more than is shown here. And if you'd like to be more precise when it comes to making a motion, you can change the motions that we've suggested to reflect the additional 9 cents in the price. That's that, to make it that $31.09 per square foot. Staff recommends that the proceeds from the 4A sale be reserved by the city for improvements to the entrance walkways and parking lot in conjunction with that it be used for improvements to the entrance walkways and parking lot in conjunction with whatever urban renewal funding the agency board considers later this spring. In this photo, you can see City Hall, Heartwood, Portal, Park, and Plaza. You can also see the space between them and the need for continued work to stitch the neighborhood together and make connections. We're scheduling a date later this spring to bring more information on these projects and talk about the options to use urban renewal funds for them. So more to come on that. For your deliberation and possible action today, we have the proposal for the 2 property transactions at 4A and 5. Because this proposal involves both a purchase by the agency and a sale by the city, staff have drafted 2 motions for your consideration. If you are interested in taking action today, you can make a motion and vote as the agency board to repurchase parcel 5 from Atkins Dame. After that action is complete, the mayor can gavel out of the agency board meeting, and you can continue as city council with a motion and vote on the proposed property sale to Atkins Dame. Thank you for your consideration of all of this work in the riverfront. Staff can answer questions about the property transaction and other riverfront items. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that presentation. Staff, one clarifying question that I had, thank you for the note about the correction to the cost per square foot of $31.09. I would imagine that all motions by the renewal agency and the city council would be amended to that same number, both of them $31
Yes.
Per square foot. Thank you very much. Now open the floor for council discussion, and Councilor Kaczynski.
Yes, I notice that the portion of the parcel that's into the city's Hall's parking lot kind of cuts off that sidewalk connection there. And there's going to be construction eventually happening to kind of redo that parking lot. Are they, even once we've sold the property, are they willing to let us still walk there until we can get better plans into place, or until they need to start construction on the affordable housing?
Yes, it's a good question. Yes, the answer is yes. We would work on that with them together, and that's the sort of thing that we could clarify in an easement or in an agreement to make sure that we don't end up in a spot where the access is impeded unnecessarily. So okay. Yes, we'll sort through that.
All right, thanks. Councilor Zelenka.
Thanks. So roughly the cost of the URD is about $48,000 difference between the 2 property. Councilor Kaczynski alluded to it, but do we have plans for parcel 5? Would we just, do we know what we're going to do with it?
So we would include that in the work that Walker Macy is doing as they're looking at basically the City Hall property. And so if you as the agency board decided to move forward and include parcel 5 back into the ownership of the city plus agency together, then we would use that to make sure that the parking area is configured optimally, and to make sure that that north side of Fifth Avenue, right where it hits the park, is configured optimally. So we would bring that back to you this spring as we present a larger context picture for you.
Yeah, because moving that substation and transformer very far would be very expensive, as opposed to just moving it a little bit. So that might be taken up by that space. That would probably be one potential outcome. I think the affordable housing project is so awesome. If we can facilitate that, that would be great. I'm all on board on that. It's also awesome that there's some movement on the restaurant on parcel 8. I had another question about the triangle on the other side of the viaduct. It's a weird shape. And part of the reason we're doing this is because these weird shapes. And what's the thoughts around that one, Will?
You know, at times I've wondered if the simplest thing might be to just change the shape of the viaduct, and that would certainly make the parking lot work a lot more easily. I've been told that that's too expensive, so we are focusing on what we can do around that. With the land that the city owns, we're trying to take a hard look at just how all of that comes together. And so the land on the west side of the viaducts, as that's part of that parking lot, there's some of it's stormwater retention, but we want to include all of that parking lot land as part of this study so that we can really maximize the space, whether it's for beauty or for parking access or for ease. We know that there's a lot of value that could be used in that land, and so we don't want any of it to go to waste.
Yeah, okay. One more question. So on the steam plant, if developed, the eastern portion of it, the metal shed part of it, which was not part of the original building, that would go away, right? That's the potential plan for the.
Correct. There's a portion of it that's from the 30s, a portion from the 40s, and then the metal corrugation is from the 50s, and that part doesn't have the same kind of historical value. And so the proposal is to take that part down while retaining the sections from the 30s and 40s with the nice masonry walls and the gracious windows. And so it becomes part of a hybrid development there.
Right, because that part is literally a metal shed with steel and just metal on it because it was housing machines. Okay, thanks. Good presentation. Very clear and comprehensive, by the way. Thank you.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Will, for the presentation. I support and have no problem with the proposal. I also agree with Councilor Zelenka. I'm really excited about the potential to add more affordable housing and bring in a food space into the mix. I think that will just really help promote this riverfront area. I do have one question, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is I just saw the entire plot plan for development. Are we going to update that to include the additional 8 acres that we got in the land swap from UO? And will we have a future work session where we can talk a little bit about what, if anything, we're going to do with that? Thank you.
I can give a brief answer to that, and then we can have further conversation about that at a later point. I think that land does go into the riverfront. I mean, it is part of the riverfront district. You know, the riverfront district is much larger than just the riverfront property that we purchased from eWeb, and so that's something that staff will be working on from a variety of perspectives to make sure we are planning forward and using it prudently. I will be working with the city manager on more about that.
Thank you. I just would like to urge that future maps that be included into it, because it really does feel like it's part of it. I mean, it's contiguous with the existing site. I just think it gives us a more holistic view. Thank you very much.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Will. And I echo my colleagues' comments in almost all regards that I can think of. I'm also in favor of voting positively on this. Although when we first had conversations about the potential of this property for City Hall in the whole area before we purchased it, before we designated that as City Hall, there was initial conversation about the possibility of creating a Fire Station 17 somewhere on the footprint in what my understanding, and perhaps I'm wrong, but was somewhere in what we're now calling essentially that Section 5. Is my geography right about that, or is that still a part of the conversation about the future of the area or the space?
Councillor Clark, I think I can answer that to some extent, and then I think Chief Caven's obviously the best.
Yeah.
But my understanding is we have been looking in that area of town for a potential future fire station. My understanding from Chief Caven is that actually the better spot optimally would be on the east side of the river instead of on the west side by City Hall. But that's work that they are continuing to do to assess what it could look like if we add a new station. We haven't had any additional conversation about having a fire station in that location that you're talking about in parcel 5. I think that as a notion in that particular spot would not be the spot, even if we did have it on the City Hall property.
Okay. Okay. Just wanting to think through the potential for what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. I will just briefly add that staff also really appreciate the comprehensive nature of this presentation and how visually rich it is when speaking about this type of work. It's really important to clarify exactly what we're referring to, and I think anyone following along from the public has probably a clearer understanding of the different parcels that we're working with on this site and how they work together to create a really vibrant neighborhood. Well, I can remember a conversation that we had on the phone well over a decade ago, imagining hundreds of housing units at the riverfront and talking about the possibility of capacity and different mixes of incomes and different types of housing units being created here. And I just want to say that this is a great example of holding to a vision and staying the course with redevelopment. It does take years, but I'm very excited to see the possibility of the new affordable housing parcel and that partnership and the integration of all of these different housing opportunities in a neighborhood that has quite a lot of walkable and bikeable transportation infrastructure, and the downtown loop for those of you who have not ridden our new looping bus in downtown just yet. Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, quick question, Matt. What was the location that Chief Caven said would be a preferred location to the Lot 5 area? I missed that part.
So I don't want to speak with too much authority on this, Councillor Zelenka. We could definitely have Chief Caven come back, but I think when they're drawing a circle around where the best location would be, they've been looking on both sides of the river, right? Just on the other side of Ferry Street Bridge or on the City Hall side. And I think there's more work to do to determine where that would actually land.
So somewhere in that vicinity, but not here. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Council. I'll now turn to the agency president to put a motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Gross. Just saw a hand go up. Go ahead,
Sorry about that, Mayor. That was kind of a last minute thing. Just kind of in response to in general to station locations. You generally don't like to be backed up next to a river because it cuts off, 180 degrees of your response. And so you're looking for the most efficient way to gain the most coverage. And that's, I think, why Chief Caven's thinking in another location. Now, if you got a bridge right there, that's different. But you're still, if you think about that site on Lot 5, it really limits the direction in which fire apparatus and personnel can respond. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Council. I'll now turn to the agency president to put a motion forward.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Will, for the presentation. I do want to ask about our motion if I need to be a little bit more accurate in naming the $31.09 purchase price rather than $31.
Yes, Council President. Thank you. And in both motions for the Urban Renewal Agency and when we come back to Council.
Perfect. So I move to approve the use of urban renewal funds to repurchase parcel 5 and authorize the agency director to take the actions necessary to acquire parcel 5 for a purchase price of $31.09 per square foot.
Second.
Any further discussion from Council? Then seeing none, I'll now take a vote for this motion. Council, if you could raise your hands. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hands raised, though you move around on the screen as that happens. Thank you, everyone. And the motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you, Urban Renewal Agency. I will now close the February 11th Urban Renewal Agency meeting and call the February 11th, 2026 City Council work session to order. And our next topic is a continuation of the first, as was just described by staff. And so I will turn to the council president to put a second motion forward with the amended $31.09 per square foot.
Move to direct the city manager to take the actions necessary to transfer ownership of the portion of the City Hall property labeled Parcel 4A and shown on Attachment B to this AIS to Atkins Dame for the purchase price of $31.09 per square foot.
Second.
Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll take a vote for this motion. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And Councillor Evans, if you could move your hand a little, there you go. Councillor Evans 8. And the motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you, council. That concludes our second agenda item. Now turn to the city manager to introduce our third topic today, which is a work session on housing production incentives.
All right, Mayor, I'm going to turn it right over to Amanda D'Souza on our team to walk you through the presentation.
Thanks, City Manager. Okay, I think my presentation is up. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Amanda D'Souza, Development Programs Manager in the Community Development Division. Today, I'll be building on the 3 proposed housing production incentives we first presented at your November work session on urban growth strategies. I'll start with some background and reminder of the housing need we're trying to address. I'll then walk through the frameworks of the 3 proposed programs. Today, we're looking for your general feedback on these proposed frameworks and have identified next steps you could take if you'd like to move forward with any of the proposed incentives. For background, I'll start by recapping the housing need we're trying to address. As part of the Urban Growth Strategies work, you've heard about the state's new Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, or ONA, which has changed how cities must plan for future housing needs within the urban growth boundary. Rather than planning only for population growth, we now also need to account for decades of housing underproduction and must show what actions we're taking to address this need. Using the 2026 ONA, we know Eugene needs 26,000 new dwelling units in the next 20 years. To achieve this, we will need to produce 70% more units annually for the next 10 years compared to the last 10 years. Since 2013, we've averaged about 950 new units per year, and the ONA states will need to be producing up to 1,600 per year. Ongoing market challenges mean this is going to remain a steep hill to climb. In addition to demonstrating how we intend to meet our overall housing need, the state also requires we show how we're meeting our city's specific affordability needs. This chart shows how that 26,000 unit number is broken up over 5 affordability buckets based on area median income, or AMI. On the far left are new units needed for households with the lowest incomes. The bars in green are units needed for households making less than 80% of AMI, typically a level of affordability that can only be provided through subsidized affordable housing. For households earning 60% AMI and below, the 2 buckets on the left, we have federal, state, and local tools to boost production. This includes incentives like the Low Income Rental Housing Property Tax Exemption, or LRPT, and Home RFP awards that you just approved, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund RFP, which you'll consider in June. The proposed housing production incentives we'll be presenting today target the 3 buckets on the right because we have limited or no tools for these. The first is moderate income housing, which in this chart is designated as 80 to 120% of AMI. For today's discussion, we're considering moderate income housing to also include the 60 to 80% AMI range, since most affordable housing tools are only available for projects at or below 60% of AMI. According to the ONA, we need almost 7,000 new housing units in the 60 to 120% AMI range in the next 20 years to meet our need. We'll also be proposing a tool for market rate housing, which is considered to be anything over 120% of AMI. The ONA says we need over 7,000 market rate units in the next 20 years to meet our need. The program we're proposing today hopes to significantly accelerate the production of market rate housing throughout the city. Today, I'll be presenting on 3 proposed incentives. 2 are tax exemptions, one for moderate income housing and one for housing in commercial centers. The third is a revolving loan fund focused on moderate income housing. I'll start with the 2 proposed programs that target moderate income housing. The 2 new proposed 10-year tax exemption programs would be enabled by a state statute for transit supportive multi-unit housing, the same statutes that enable MUPD, our existing housing incentive program focused on downtown. The tax exemption would only apply to the new improvements, and similar to the MUPD and LRPD, it decreases operating costs during exemption years. I'll walk through some of the highlights for this tax exemption, but you can find more details, including the reasoning behind each of these elements in Attachment A. So this first proposed program is designed to fill a gap in the city's existing housing incentive programs, as none of the city's current tax incentive programs are geared specifically toward moderate income housing. That is affordable to households earning between 60 and 120% of AMI. The LRPD is available citywide, but it's only for projects at 60% and below. And the MUPD supports market rate, but it's only available downtown. Both rental and home ownership would be eligible. Projects would have to have a minimum of 4 units or 25 units per acre. The proposed boundary for this program is any property within a quarter mile of a transit line, shown here in teal on the map. This is the broadest geography allowed by the state statutes, which were created to incentivize transit-oriented development. The state statutes that enable the program require that projects be completed by 2032. Staff are proposing the tax exemption programs as pilots and suggest using this as the end of a pilot period for this program with an update within 2 years. Finally, staff recommend an application process with elements similar to the LRPD, which includes a 60-day turnaround and consideration as a council consent agenda item. The next program I'm going to talk about is the state's Moderate Income Revolving Loan Fund, also known as the MERL. I'll start with the basics of the program. The Oregon legislature established this program in 2024 to support the production of very low, and moderate income housing. The program is administered by Oregon Housing and Community Services, which can loan state funds to cities and counties, who can then in turn loan or grant those funds to developers who are building eligible projects. There are 2 options for loan repayment, which I'll go over next. The city keeps 5% for administrative costs, and the county keeps 1%, or 5% of the total loan amount for administrative costs, and the county keeps 1%. And the city has discretion about some elements of program setup, such as affordability, geography, and any other local criteria. As a grant or loan, the MERL would support housing development by providing capital that reduces the need for private equity or debt, thereby decreasing the rent or purchase price for future residents. I'm now going to show you 4 flowcharts that describe in more detail the logistics of how the program works and how to set it up locally. These are also included in Attachment B. As I mentioned, there are 2 repayment options within the program. When the legislature initially established the MERL, it enabled loan repayment to be funded through a division of property taxes. So in this scenario, OHCS loans the funds to the city, and then the city grants those funds to the developer. The city's loan from OHCS is then repaid through program fees that are collected by the county assessor from the developer. The new housing is exempted from property taxes for 10 to 15 years, but the program fee is equivalent to the exemption amount. The county then sends the collected program fees to OHCS to repay the loan. An alternative method of loan repayment was introduced during the 2025 legislative session. Under option B, the city can repay the loan to OHCS through an alternative revenue source. So, for example, OHCS would still loan the funds to the city, but in this scenario, the city could loan the funds to the developer. The developer then pays the loan back to the city, and we pay the loan back to OHCS. Next, I'll go over the process to establish a local program. First, the city would need to pass an ordinance or resolution to establish the program and outline local criteria. In Eugene, we typically establish programs like this through an ordinance, which would require a public hearing before action. The city would then enter into a master agreement with OHCS, which includes the legal agreements that would be used for approved projects. And then OHCS would enter into an agreement with the county. This is needed for both repayment options because the county assessor determines the maximum loan amount, which is based on the projected new taxable value. I'll briefly touch on the state mandated application process for the MURL. I won't go into too much detail because, as you can see, there's quite a few steps, but it is more fully described in attachment B. As you can see, the MURL is a multi-party undertaking. All these groups need to weigh into the application process for a project to be awarded funds. I'll highlight for you step 7, which is circled here, as the point at which council would be involved in making the final determination on the application. As we've evaluated this program, one of the pieces we've been looking at is what the risk is to the city, since we would be borrowing the funds from OHCS. While the developer is the one responsible for paying back the loan, the city pledges its full faith and credit when it borrows from another entity. So we would ultimately be the entity that is liable to repay the loan. So if a developer were unable to make payments, in option A, where the developer pays a fee equivalent to their exempted property taxes, the city would only be able to rely on the tax assessor's delinquent processes. In option B, where we could provide the funds to the developer as a loan, we'd have other options, including having a lien on the property, which helps mitigate some of the risk. There's draft legislation right now that fixes some technical issues in option B that we're monitoring that would make it make the more effective MURL path for the developer and a less risky path for the city. The final program I'll highlight is the 10-year tax exemption for housing in commercial centers. This program would have no affordability restrictions and would incentivize the development of more market rate housing. As I mentioned, we need to see over 7,000 new units for 120% AMI or more. The only significant financial incentives we have to support market rate housing are the standard and accelerated MUPD, which are only available in the downtown area. It's unlikely we'll be able to rely on downtown housing development to meet the entire need, given the many headwinds that make downtown development challenging. Like the moderate income housing program, rental or home ownership would be eligible, and the same project size minimums would apply. For geographic boundary, we are proposing centers that align with the centers concept discussed in new chapters of the Envision Eugene Comprehensive Plan, which is proposed for adoption in late 2026. Through the city's planning for future growth and development, we've identified 3 types of centers: downtown center, shown in yellow, core commercial center, shown in orange, and neighborhood center, shown in red. We are proposing that this program apply to the core commercial and downtown centers, so the orange and yellow, but not the neighborhood center shown in red. Core commercial centers are typically located near transit and provide convenient access to people's daily needs, such as housing, jobs, groceries, schools, and services. The downtown center encompasses the downtown core, riverfront, midtown, and other high-density residential commercial areas nearby. Offering the incentive in these 2 categories would support the creation of mixed-use centers. We also propose a 2032 pilot period for this program. And finally, for project requirements and application process, we're proposing using the accelerated MUPD parameters. This includes a 60-day turnaround, council consent agenda item, staff review of applications, and projects would still need to meet all 7 MUPD public benefit criteria. Here's a recap of the high-level parameters for each of the programs you heard about today. As a reminder, as part of our urban growth strategies work, we need to show that we're taking action to boost housing production at all income levels. These tools would help do that. I'll end with an overview of your options today. There are elements of each of these 3 programs that we'd like to hear feedback on from you and the public, so we've identified next steps to do either of those. These potential next steps could apply to any combination of the 3 incentives. You don't have to do the same thing for all 3. So if you'd like to continue refining frameworks before seeking public feedback, then you could choose option 1, which would be to schedule another work session to continue discussion. If you'd like to seek public feedback earlier in the process, you could choose option 2, which is to schedule a public hearing on an ordinance for any of the 3 programs and schedule a follow-up work session. And with that, I will hand it back to the mayor and you for discussion.
Thank you, Amanda. Very much appreciate that comprehensive overview and also the flowcharts of some important work. We'll now open the floor for council discussion and see Councillor Clark and then Councillor Groves and Councillor Kaczynski in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Amanda. And I want to say from my point of view, I would like to move forward as quickly as possible on all 3. I know there's quite a lot of excitement in the community in general around the idea of Merle, but all options that you laid on the table seem like good ones for us to try and meet the state numbers that we need to meet, but certainly because people need more places to live in Eugene, and anything we can be doing to incentivize making it easier to do financially as quickly as possible is a wise decision, in my opinion. So I'm for moving this, all 3 is forward as quickly as possible. Whichever is the shortest path, which I suspect is option 2. Am I right about that?
Likely, yes. If you wanted to seek public feedback and then have a follow-up work session, correct.
I couldn't see anything in there that, for me, needs to be refined or discussed ad nauseum at this point. I think your planning and your work is very good there, and I'd like us to be moving forward. So thank you very much.
Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amanda. That was a very helpful presentation, helped connect some of the dots for me that I wasn't quite clear on. I'm with Councillor Clark. I would like to see us move forward with, I guess it's option 2, that would get us there the fastest. But at the same time, I would also like to look at the option that places the least amount of risk on the city. I think we're still in some volatile times here, and I would rather keep the city out of harm's way when it comes to having to assume default on something. I mean, I realize we'll hold the bag with part of it either way, but it just seems like the one that minimizes that is good. And I guess my final question is, are there any time constraints that we're kind of under the gun? I mean, I want to move forward, but I mean, is there any additional reason why we should move faster?
Will, do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, we're ready to move as fast as council is.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'm still Will Dowdy, the Community Development Director. I think there's a couple different parts of this. So one is the work that we're doing on behalf of, or the work that we're doing for the state. And so there's state requirements that say that we have to be developing tools, and that's the work that planning is bringing forward with urban growth strategies. Implementing these pieces, we are in a very good spot calendar-wise for moving these forward. So so we're ahead of any deadlines, and and so if you move these forward, we will check the box and be in a good spot for demonstrating that we've been responsive to the need for more programs. So that would be if you were to move this forward through that. So there's at this point no real timeline pressure from the state. We have had private developers who have been interested in these programs. And they particularly talked with one affordable housing developer who is trying to use the MERL to make housing possible. And so what we have heard from them is the sooner the better. And they're trying to, they would hope to have the fully approved approved application by November. And so counting back from that, I don't know. I don't know if that's possible because there's a lot of steps that need to happen in between, and we don't control all of those steps. I think the bigger picture here is that we know that there is interest in the community. I have heard, for all of these programs, I have heard developers say, if you had these sort of incentives where I would like to build, then the property that I've been sitting on, I would be able to move that forward. And so I think that is a consideration for you.
And a new name is formed. Thank you, Stillwell. That's very helpful. It was the deadlines I was concerned about, and which sounds like we're fine either way. I would still like to see us move as expeditiously as possible. Thank you.
Councilor Krasinski.
Yes, thank you. I am in agreement that moving this forward as expeditiously as possible would be desired on my part. I did have a couple of questions. First, when we're talking about fixed route LTD service, what do we mean by that? Like, how do we know it's a fixed route?
Right. It's basically a regular bus line. So no, not like a special one-off line. So the bus lines right now.
Okay, so we're not talking about
regular,
like it has to have infrastructure that would make it hard to change the route. It's just the bus line exists.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
On some of the slides, the language was 4 units, at least 4+ units or 25 units per acre.
Mm-hmm.
And the or there I had a question about, because it's technically possible to get to 25 units per acre on a very small lot. Is it really like an and kind of situation?
It depends on, I mean, we can certainly look at that. Right now we have it as an or. I think at this point any housing would be useful, and wanting to recognize that on those small lots that could be better used, more housing would be there. But we can take a closer look at that. But
I mean, I am fine with the or.
Okay.
I was just seeking some clarity because particularly with some of the middle housing and I feel like it's logistically challenging. Like it might not be worth it if you're just building 2 units.
Yeah.
But was wondering if like that would fall into that. And when we're talking about the moderate income units, I feel like it falls into a space between sort of market rate where like I go and I'm like, okay, I'm showing you my income, but I don't have to like prove things. And if I start earning more money, I don't get not eligible. And I know a lot of the affordable housing, there's a lot more income verification and application process and restrictions around it. When we're talking about this moderate income housing, are people with 120% AMI going to have to end up going through those same income verification processes? Or is it more that you just have to set the rents at that level?
That's a great question. So for the MERL, so the state mandated program, that is an income qualified process. And so they will have to go through the normal income qualification where they have to meet that requirement at move-in, but once they're in there, they don't have to continue to show their income. They're in there as long as they want to be. For the tax exemption for moderate income housing, we are proposing just having the rents have to be set at the 100% AMI level. And so that way, what they're doing is introducing a supply of units that are affordable to moderate income households. And partially because income qualification is a staff intensive process, and this is not a revenue generating program. And so that's a way that we can be introducing the units we need into the housing supply without creating more staff work on the other end.
And you may have said this and I may have missed it, is there like a time limit on how long the rents have to be at that level?
For the tax exemption, it's for the 10-year period. And then for the MERL, it's for the loan period, so 10 to 15 years. And that depends on the program that council would choose to create and project specific, whether it's a 10 or a 15 year that's approved.
Okay, and I will say, I think that particularly that space of the income limit makes a lot of sense. I last summer got bored and I looked up the rents for all of the projects that I previously received in Bupty that I could find. And what I found is that, and I looked at over 600 units I was able to find the rents for. And what I found was that the ones that were out of their 10-year exemption all of that I could find, there might have been some I missed, but the ones that I could find all were renting between 60 and 100% AMI. So it looks like once they get out of their MUPTI period, a lot of these projects we've given MUPTIs to historically are falling into that moderate income, affordable rent level, just sort of naturally. So thanks.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Very, very thoughtful and clear. On the slide about an increase in the number of housing, I was thinking of that in relationship to the tag report that we just got. In your slide, we need to get 26,000 new homes in 20 years. And the tag had us roughly 8,900 homes in 10 years, going from 79 to 88,000, 23 to 34. So that's only a third. Is there an equivalent number in this projection that for a 10-year period that would be a comparison to what TAG was doing?
I'm not sure, and I don't know if Leah, you have any more information on kind of the methodology behind the ONA and how they estimate?
16,000.
All right, I guess if you're using the if you are using they say we need to be producing 1,600 per year right now. So the ONA says that this is how many units we need to be presenting on a year basis, which is 1,600. I'm not sure what figures the TAG use, but I do know that the ONA takes into account both anticipated population growth as well as the past underproduction, which might explain the discrepancy, but it sounds like it's not that far off.
Well, it's 9,000 versus 16,000.
Okay, yeah, this is not far off.
It's half. Yeah. I guess the point is that the TAG wasn't out of the ballpark, modest compared to what we have to do. So, if MUPTI was only for affordable housing and moderate income housing, I'd be voting for all of them, but it's not. I still remain unconvinced that those are needed for market housing, especially since you've had projects just on the other side of the border, almost identical, have a MUPTI and don't have a MUPTI. Whether or not you need them is still a big question for me. I doubt it for a lot of the projects. So for the tax exemption commercial centers, there's no income requirement.
There's no income requirement. They
Just
would
market rate.
Yeah, it'd be market rate. There'd be no affordability requirement. They would still have to meet the moderate income housing contribution requirement. And so that's either paying the moderate income housing fee, which is equivalent to 10% of their exemption, or designating 30% of the units as 100% AMI.
Yeah. So how's this different than MUPTI then?
It's very similar. It would be across and a much wider geography.
So this would just be taking MUPTI for moderate income and expanding it into all those green zones associated with the quarter mile of a transit route.
So the MUPTI components would be for the center. So that's with the orange and yellow map. So so much smaller geography. The moderate income housing fee would be the quarter mile of a transit, and so that would not have the other MUPTI requirements. The main requirement is the affordability.
Oh, so the moderate income housing requirement doesn't have to pay an affordable housing fee?
No.
Or meet any of the other public benefits?
No, because the entire project would be offered between 60 and 120%.
So all those public benefits that are stipulated in rules of MUPTI wouldn't apply for this program?
Correct.
Really? That's troubling. Giving tax exemptions is supposed to be able to get public benefits other than just the moderate housing that we're getting. So that's problematic for me. The other issue is risk of default and concern, same one that Randy had. Can you explain that again with more clarity about when the city of Eugene is backing a defaulted loan?
Sure. So because we are the borrower, we are ultimately liable for making sure the loan is repaid back to OHCS within that loan time period. So the 10 to 15 years, whatever is approved for the project. And so I think the riskiest time for a project is if it falls apart during construction, the money is already out the door. There's no project to sell or to recoup anything from that end. And so the city will be on the hook. Under option A, where we have made a grant to the developer, our only options for recouping dollars back is through the county's delinquency processes for how they handle property tax delinquency and foreclosures. And so we're one party removed from being able to directly get the dollars ourselves. For option B, where we can make a loan to the developer, we get to put a lien on the property, which means that we get to have we have a much stronger chance of being able to recoup our funds back. And so that's the less risky option for the city, because we get to at least have a lien on the property, which is something that we do for many other projects. We are used to putting liens on properties for when we invest funds.
Yeah. Have you quantified what that risk is? How many millions of dollars of loans that we might have out there?
I mean, I think
risk?
Yeah, it varies. The one project that we know is very interested, I think we've estimated it might be I think they've estimated $2 million what they could benefit out of the MRL. But that's the only figure that we've been able to use. I believe it's $2 million. Will, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's like a little bit less than that, but so in the $1 to $2 million range, it's just kind of using initial math.
That would be the loan amount.
That would be the loan amount. Yeah.
That's one of many.
Yeah.
So it could be millions of dollars. Okay, thank you.
But each one of those would come to you for final approval. And so there's it's not, if you create the program, that doesn't mean that you are then creating a process that runs without council intervention. You would be creating the ability for this program to happen, and you would see each application come to you, and you would have the ability to either turn down an application or ultimately to intervene and put a stop to the program or a pause on the program based on flow. So it's not something that just starts and runs without more council touches.
Thanks.
Councillor Ye, and then I'll introduce myself to the queue before coming around for a second round. Councillor Clark. Councillor Ye.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I want to first thank staff. I think this process has been very thoughtful, and the options that have come to us have been well thought out and very well explained, because they can get very complicated. And I appreciate you taking the time to really create different ways for us to understand what you're bringing to us. So thanks so much. I believe that what you've brought today is really balance as well, this crisis that we're trying to address in our community, and our interest in having some level of control, right? And some impact on what projects we're doing through these projects and what projects we're not. So I feel like it strikes that balance. I am also, like many of my colleagues, interested in moving this forward as quickly as we reasonably can. So I would be in favor of moving forward with this. And I do not have any other questions, but I appreciate the ones that my colleagues have asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I'll insert myself into the queue briefly. Just want to offer a few thoughts. One is that I often receive messages from community members who are very concerned about housing affordability, housing instability, affordability broadly in our community. Oftentimes those messages include a link to a story in another place around our country about a program that they wonder if maybe we could implement here. And in almost every single one of those cases, that program being highlighted is a program that we have implemented years ago in the city of Eugene, work that we may have actually piloted and shared nationally with other communities statewide. And I think that speaks to the really good work that has been happening here for a long time to try to get arms around this crisis with the tools that we have as a local government. I know you all care deeply about the housing affordability crisis in our community, about the crisis of affordability broadly. And what I think is especially important about this presentation from staff today is the description of these being some of our first ever efforts as a city to target the 60 to 100% incomes in our community, which are so many of the people in our community struggling to afford their basic needs every week and month of the year. And so the opportunity to step into that work and continue to do very thoughtful, well-informed work to support our moderate income individuals and families, and to help stabilize one aspect of the housing crisis that we face, I think is incredibly important. And I'm very encouraged to hear so many councilors also wanting to move forward with this work swiftly, because each calendar year that passes, we're likely to lose 10% in terms of cost. Likely next year, everything will be 10% more expensive than it was this year over time. And so meeting this crisis with urgency and not missing years at a time is very important work. I do think that it is important to move forward with enabling this work as quickly as we can. From feedback I've heard around the community from different affordable housing developers, there is interest in moving forward and using these tools and the Moderate Income Loan Fund tool in this coming year. And this council and our city enabling that process and being able to support applications that might be finalized later this summer would be an important part of helping those projects to happen and helping that housing to be built here to serve our community's needs. So I wanted to offer those thoughts, kind of big picture, and my support for this work and for this option to move forward with urgency. I also have a quick question, Amanda and Will, and it is about with the Moderate Income Loan Fund program, the geographic component to that. And I mean, this I think would be something it would be helpful to hear much more from the community and the public about. But given that we have affordable housing partners trying to do land trust housing, other types of housing that may not have transit, is that geographic component something that we could inform and revise through a public hearing in this process?
Sorry, for the loan or for the tax exemption?
For the MURL, for the loan.
Okay, for the MURL can be citywide, and we have made no recommendation on the geography. I think we would move forward assuming it's going to be applied citywide.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And now to Councillor Clark and Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a little trouble with the button there. I know that the presentation was pretty clear in the fact that this is assistance from the city, from the state, for either rental homes or for homes for purchase.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any way to further incentivize or to do what's required for the sake of building homes for purchase with either of these incentives, but to the degree we can, I would encourage us to do that. The state already has an OHCS program for the person who buys a home to be able to have down payment assistance up to 4% of that being forgiven, that you don't even have to repay. So the merging of us helping incentivize the building of such things and the state's incentivizing the financing of such things could create a much easier way for people to really build generational financial stability in our community better than we do. I hate to see us incentivize the building of nothing but rentals, as opposed to really making a push to be able to incentivize building of homes that are sold as well, especially when there's other programs to pair it with that can help with community, financial stability. So thank you.
We'll continue to look at that. I think the one of the things that we've seen the value that there's been a lot of friction in the system for building condos. It's not easy, and the state's been working on some changes to that. So when we look at but it's just a harder path to travel for a developer. When we look at some of the programs that we have, like our MUPTI program, like the exemption for centers, development in the centers that were proposed to you today. Those, I think, would continue to run into some of those challenges. However, I think the programs around moderate income are often going to be, those go citywide. So those follow the zoning that exists around the whole city. And so then they would also reflect the variety of types that we see in the city. And so depending on location, they would kind of follow what is appropriate to that neighborhood and what's consistent with that zoning. And what we have seen through the innovation and members of the community is a lot of new methods of trying to figure out how to create more homeownership units at reduced price points. And that's the creativity. The mayor spoke of land trusts and things like that. How can organizations take a smart and system-based approach to reduce some of the costs so that makes homeownership more attainable? And so we think that this would feed into some of that emerging energy that's around the community. But your point's noted, and it's something we continue to look at.
Thanks, sir, very much.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Funny, my question was around home ownership as well. Actually, I have two questions, but the first one was a little bit different than Councilor Clark's. Are there still programs for first-time homeowners? I know when I bought my first house in 1983, interest rates were 13%. And I was able to get a home loan as a first-time homeowner at 11%. And I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. But what's available out there, just so that we know, and opportunity to spread information as we meet with constituents?
I don't have a good answer at my fingertips. That's something we could pull together for you. There are programs out there.
I get that question a lot from parents that I meet with, worried about their newly adult children that have reached adulthood, and what are they going to do, especially here locally with the costs the way things are. So, I mean, whatever we can do to provide information on that. Personally, I think that information with links should be on our website. Whatever we can do, not just get people into housing, but be targeting that home ownership, because Councilor Clark is right, and I harp on this all the time. It's the home ownership is one of the few mechanisms available to the average Jill and Joe for accumulating personal wealth that carries them through their life. And so I'm very interested in that. That was one part. And then the second part, so I'm back to the liability question again. And, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I like to know where I'm going to land if I'm about to fall off a roof. And so if we end up getting stuck with a bill, do we have funds established for this to cover it? I mean, I'm assuming if it were in one of our urban development areas, we might be able to use URD funds or not.
I can speak to that. I think the issue for us would be to bring this forward on a case-by-case basis, because each project is going to be unique. The dollar amount is significant. It matters significantly in the outcome. I think what we're trying to figure out is a way that we could move forward with this while also protecting the city from kind of an unexposed risk. If the project moves forward the way it's supposed to, the city takes on a loan and then has a really clear repayment mechanism through the funds that come back from the developer. That's how it's supposed to work. That's supposed to be very clean. Money comes in, we put it right back out, and everything's fine. In the event where something does happen, we want to try to quantify that, and we would work towards developing whatever mitigations necessary. And we do have the experience of giving loans and figuring out ways to protect the city. And so we would look at kind of a combination of understanding the how we could line up a clear set of collateral so that the city can move forward in confidence, get over that risky moment in the middle, and then proceed with as going forward. And then so that's some of the material that we'd be developing as we worked on if this were to go forward. That's the material we'd be developing as we work through our own sets of rules and regulations in the application process.
I'm not trying to slow anything down here. I want to keep moving with haste on this, but at the same time, I do think we need to figure this out a little bit and have some ideas of how we would cover a default. Our operational dollars, general fund dollars, our margins so thin as it is. Anyway, I think you get where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Councilor Kaczynski.
Yes, thank you. This is following up a little bit on the ownership option questions. I'm pretty aware of some of the challenges with condos and condo development and living in condos. I was wondering how this program, and it also falls a little bit on my like 25 units per acre, sort of smaller lot, smaller unit developments. How would this intersect with things like middle housing lot divisions and townhouse development? Because with a townhouse development, you might hit that more than 4 units or more than 25 units per acre in the development, but they're all divided up into separate lots in advance. With the middle housing lot division, if you have like a 12-unit cottage cluster that has gotten this, would they be able to divide up into different lots later on? And then how would that play out with the exemption? And so it's not something I think that we need to solve in advance of this, but I think as we're thinking about home ownership, thinking about how those tools to create ownership options might intersect with this.
Yeah, that's a great, I don't have an answer today. It's a great question. I think that's something we can dig into if council chooses to move forward, as we dig into the details and put together the ordinance and start thinking about how I'm positive there's a solution and we can figure it out. But we can follow up with that at a future work session with some more information on that.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I had 2 requests for information. One related to what Randy was saying. I would request that when we come back for this at or before the public hearing, that we quantify the risk profile on this. That number is going to be in the millions, and as a potential risk. The actual risk we can quantify too, depending on what other institutions see as a default percentage, which is pretty low, but still it's not zero. So we still have to figure out what we would do in order to do that, where we would get that money, because it could be millions of dollars, and that would hit the general fund if we don't have a plan. So I'd like to request that information, and also the fact that the moderate income housing 10-year exemption and the commercial centers don't include any of the public benefits and rules associated that we crafted for MUPT is a bit troubling. Can you bring back options for us to be able to look at installing some of those into this program, like the one that says you have to abide by the rules, labor laws, and rules about procurement and 10% above code, and all those different things that we worked hard to craft are still really good. So if we could bring back what those are and how we might incorporate them, and if we should, I think that would be very valuable for the conversation that we'll have about the final programs.
Yeah, so I'd like to just clarify. So the tax exemption for moderate income housing, we're saying that one, that's the one that would be for everything within a quarter mile of transit. So specifically for moderate income, that would not need to meet the MUPT public benefit criteria.
Right.
But for the tax exemption for market rate housing in commercial centers, that would still have to meet all 7 of the public benefit criteria that you've crafted. So that they would still have to meet all those 7.
Okay. So yeah, the moderate income ones then.
Yeah, the moderate income would not have to, as proposed. But we can certainly bring back that option.
Thank you, councilors. I'm going to offer one more note as we're talking about different programs and different types of ways that the city can work effectively to support housing production. And one of them is also just a reminder as we're having this conversation about risk management, and that with something like the moderate income loan program, that in this, would vary across different projects, but in thinking about the types of projects that would be applying for that program, the collection of funding mechanisms, the capital stack, so to speak, that would lead to those projects being constructed is much more complex than just the City of Eugene's participation in that program. So I think it's just important to acknowledge that as we're talking about risk management, that we also are trying to be a part of helping projects happen that might be close to happening, but this is not, absolutely not, the only money that would be going into the construction of these projects that, in any version that we have seen come forward in examples from our development community, and even thinking about the number of units proposed. So offer that for our continued discussion and future discussion with the community. Council President, if we are ready, I will turn to you to put a motion forward.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for that presentation, Amanda. I'm highly supportive of us moving forward. As I have seen with my other colleagues, to pursue option 2. So I will move to direct the city manager to schedule a public hearing on an ordinance implementing the proposed production incentives, and move to direct the city manager to schedule a work session following the public hearing.
Second. Any further discussion from council? Then seeing none, I will now take a vote for this motion. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you, Councillor Evans. And the motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you, Council, and thank you, staff, for a collection of really excellent presentations about an issue that is so central to many concerns in our community and to the health and future of our community in both the City Council meeting and our renewal agencies meeting. We have just a handful of minutes left today, and so I want to turn to one other important conversation, which is not on our agenda. And Councillor Clark, I see you in the queue. Denny Bro, who has been our director of PDD, is retiring. As the public knows, this has been announced. This is after 36 years of service in our community, serving first and working with small businesses and supporting local businesses and their success in Eugene 36 years ago, working on economic development, on revitalization projects, on building partnerships across our community. Most of the things that have happened through complex partnerships and the type of commitment and discipline it takes over time to see those projects to fruition has had not just Denny's fingerprints with them, but really his attention and care for a number of years. City building is generational work, and we have had essentially a generation of his time and attention in our community. So before I turn to council, I just want to personally thank Denny and his team. Denny, now I can see your face to say this to you directly. Thank you for the years of attention and care and creativity that you have brought to our community. You have been serving in this role through extraordinary wide range of economic times and different chapters in the city of Eugene's history. And I just really appreciate the commitment of so many years to our community and to its future. So thank you. And I will turn it over to Councillor Clark, Councillor Groves, and I'll head on through the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to add and echo the mayor's comments, sir. Thank you very much for so many years of service on a career span of such a successful long time, and having been at the very head of a team of people, seeing so many things built in our community in that time frame must leave a fellow proud to call it a day on a career like this, because people live in buildings down by the river now that didn't before, brother. And, you've been a part of that for a very, very long time. We have a revitalized river area. I don't even know what to call it. The whole area, because of your work. And I personally just want to say thank you, because I know as many times as I've needed further detail about information about projects that were being considered throughout the community, I have always relied on being able to get a straight understanding of things from you, and you've been so helpful to me. So thank you for what you've done for the community and for helping me too. Thank you, sir.
Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Geez, Denny, how many years have we known each other? I'm sure it's well over 30. Congratulations on a job well done and retirement that's well earned and richly deserved. I I appreciated a word the mayor used, creative, in your approach, the creativity you brought to the job. I've also appreciated your straight and direct talk. That's the way I try to communicate, and I certainly appreciate that. You use an economy of words, and that's not always something we see in government. So thank you for that. You've been involved with so many important projects over the years, and I know back in my days in fire, we had many discussions about access, and I always felt like you were trying to find a way to meet the needs we had as a fire department, but you know, the needs the community had as well, which, you know, should never be in opposition to each other, but sometimes it's working to get to yes. And I felt like you always were open to that. And you have overseen a staff that's extremely talented and does some very difficult and at times, unfortunately, thankless work, but it's so important to the development of this community. In the interest of time, I've got a lot more I could say, but thank you, and I hope you stay in touch. Adios, amigo.
Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. Denny, 36 years. You've helped Eugene grow. You've helped Eugene grow responsibly. You've led vital investments in and around our downtown and riverfront area. And you, like me and my family, you are a dedicated Dodgers fan. I trust it's no accident, Denny, that that spring training begins on February 20th, your pending retirement date. If and when I am ever fortunate to retire, I hope my timing is as impeccable as yours, and I hope my career is as illustrious. Thank you, Denny.
Councillor Zelenka.
So in my over 30 years of working with the city of Eugene, I've had the pleasure of watching Denny, watch you rise up through the ranks and grow and become such an incredible asset to the city of Eugene and the work that we all do, and in particular, the city council. Got a really long list of accomplishments. I hope you write them down, actually, because it's a fun exercise to do. Because and then you kind of have that in posterity. Maybe your staff could do that for you and give it to you. But I very much appreciated the clarity that you brought to all the work that you did in the development department and planning, and your straight talk. And it very much helped me understand these complex issues and help me decide when I need to make a decision. So over the last 20 years as a counselor. So thank you for all that long service and the work for the city. One of the things that I think people strive to, and I know you do, is that you want to leave the place in better shape than you found it than when you started. And I think you did that in spades. So you can hold your head up high and think really fondly on the work that you've done. So thank you very much, Danny.
Councillor Ye.
Thanks, Mayor. So first, I'm just going to echo everything everyone has said, like double exclamation point. So true. And Denny, I just want to thank you for the huge impact you've had on our community. But also I know this isn't the end, right? I don't know what you're going to do with your retirement, but whatever it is and whoever's gets your time and your talents, they will be the better for it. And I hope we'll hear about you and what you end up doing with this next journey of your life into the future. And thanks for giving us these years.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, Denny, for giving us the opportunity to thank you publicly for many, many years of work. I just saw you undo your microphone.
Well, I just want to thank all of you. I've shared with others. I was trying to calculate how many council meetings I've probably been to in those 36 years, and it's well over 2,000, I think. The difference is I got paid for it. You all volunteer a lot of your time, so I want to thank all of you for how much time you spend trying to help grow the community, make it a better place as well. I've been very lucky, mostly because I work with talented people. So Counselor Zelenka, my list will mostly be about the people I worked with, not the things I worked on. And today is a representative of like the level of talent we have with Will and Amanda here. That transcends across the organization. I think it's the most talented team we've ever had, not only in planning and development, but across the organization. So I'm excited about the future as a community member because I'll leave, but you know, things will go on and we have very talented people to do that. So if my wife's watching at home, thanks for your patience, and you're going to have to be more patient because you're going to see a lot more of me. And if my grandkids are watching, Eli and Dylan, I'll see you soon. And one more thing, if anyone's thinking about 36 years of service at the City of Eugene, I will tell you, it'll make you a better person in the end. And so I highly recommend it.
Great advice.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Denny.
Really appreciate it.
And
Councillor
it helps
Evans.
to start when you're a teenager.
Mayor,
It does, yeah.
Councillor Evans, my apologies for missing you earlier. My guess is your hand was raised.
yeah, my hand was raised and I was waving it. Again, thank you, Denny, for all the work you've done over the last 36 years. And particularly, I have to say that, you know, my first interactions with you were when I was on the LTD board and we were trying to push through 2 new MX lines, one going from downtown Eugene through Gateway, and then the West Eugene MX, which I chaired that committee, and I found that our teamwork with the LTD staff and the staff of the City of Eugene was incredibly valuable in terms of realizing that project and making that project a reality. So thank you for that. Thank you for clarifying certain things for me that I didn't understand in these last 12 years on council. And again, you know, I'm a softball dad, you're a softball dad. So, you know, we have spent many years tracing around Oregon, Washington, and California, chasing our daughters and their softball careers. So, again, and your son-in-law played football for me too. So, again, Denny, thank you for all of your service and the number of years that you put in at the city. And I'm sure that you're going to be around for some sage advice now and for the foreseeable future. So thank you.
Thank you, Denny. Thank you to your team. Thank you for leaving us also in very good hands with a lot of excellent people doing really important work. Thank you, City Council. With that, this concludes our agenda for today, and I now close the February 11th, 2026 City Council work session, and we are adjourned.